Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Workshop 2. Here are the competencies that we will attain in this workshop. First, you will state research questions. You will indicate scope and delimitation of your study and present written statement of the problem. So for the first competency, states the research questions. So what are research questions? These are questions. You can have this one in quantitative or qualitative research. So, it narrows the purpose statement to specific questions that researchers seek to answer. Later, we will discuss the purpose statements. So, researchers typically develop them before identifying the methods of the study. So, you need to present these research questions before you will develop the methods of your study. Example of the underlying the methods, the types of data to be collected, analyzed, and interpreted in the study. Researchers typically state multiple research questions so that they can fully explore the topic. Okay? So research questions are like road signs of your research project. They will help guide the way that you will investigate your topic. So when you start a study, you often begin with a broader statement like a purpose statement. Then, this statement outlines the general aim or goal of the research. However, to get a clear picture of what you need to do, you will develop research or a specific research question. So, we have purpose statement. We also have research questions. Okay? So, of course, research questions are very important. First, as I've mentioned, so that you will narrow the focus of your study. Then, you plan, as I've said, it is like a road sign, a road map that will guide you in your investigation. Also, it will aid you in the exploration and understanding of your study. Okay? So research questions are very important because they help researchers go from a broad research goal to a detailed plan for gathering and analyzing data. They ensure that the study is focused, well-organized, capable of providing valuable insights into the chosen topic. So that is the reason why even though we need to have a purpose statements, we also need to create research questions to narrow the focus of our study. Okay, so we have here in quantitative research, the questions relate attributes or characteristics of individual or organization. So you will learn that these are variables. So we already discussed what are variables. Okay? Ginawa mo okay today? Sige. So, in quantitative research, questions are designed to investigate and understand specific attributes or characteristics of an individual organizations. Kaya, yun. Meron tayong mga variables. So, what are these variables? They are the traits, qualities, or features that can vary or be measured. Independent variables, dependent variables, mediating variables, all of those variables. As a general quantitative research is all about collecting data through methods like if you will do social research, you can have like surveys. And in our case, we are doing scientific study. We are doing experiments or observations. And then, we will analyze that data with statistical techniques. By turning attributes into variables, researchers can use numbers to examine patterns, relationships, and also patterns, relationships, differences also in a systematic and precise way. So all in all, this quantitative research will help us in drawing conclusions and make predictions based on the data collected. So we will rely on the results of our numbers, of our data in our experiment. Is there any relationship? Is there any changes or differences or any pattern from the data that we collected? Next one, we have writing quantitative research questions. Research questions have a vital role in refining and concentrating the main purpose of a research study. They essentially rephrase the general purpose into specific questions that researchers intend to address. These research questions can serve different functions, such as understanding how participants react to a single factor, comparing groups based on specific outcomes, or exploring the relationships between the variables. And that's the reason why we will write the purpose of the statement. Later, we will also write the research questions for the purpose of narrowing the study. Research questions are found in all designs in quantitative research, such as experiments, correlational studies, and surveys. So these research questions serves as a guide. They guide the research process and help researchers pinpoint what they need to investigate and to measure. Mas specific pa sa tulo ka specific objectives. Okay, lahi itong general, then tulo ka specific sa purpose statement. Lahi pod ning pag-state og research questions. What are the guidelines that we need to follow in order to form or craft research questions? Okay, questions man siya. It will begin with how, what, or why. You will craft your research question by using one of these question starting words. How, what, or why. This helps ensure your question is inquisitive and seeks to understand a particular aspect of your chosen topic. Next, we have to specify the independent, dependent, and mediating or control variables. You need to specify. So, in your research question, you will clearly define the key variables that you will need in your study. This includes the independent variable. Again, what are these independent variable? The factor that you're manipulating or you will examine. Manipulating or examining. The dependent variable are the outcome or response that you will measure, and any mediating or control variables that might be relevant to your study. Next, to use the words describe, compare, or relate to indicate the action or connection among the variables. So this part of the question helps clarify what you aim to do with the variables. Are you describing a phenomenon? Are you comparing different groups? Or exploring relationships between the variables? Next, you indicate the participants and the research site of the study. Specify who are the participants in your study. It will be specific group, organizations, or entities, and where the research will take place. This provides context and helps narrow down the scope of your study. So here is our example for those different steps. Question: effect of different amounts of sunlight to plants' growth. Begin with these question starter words. So we will use what. What works well on your investigation on specific aspect of plant growth. So, pwede kang gumamit ng what if you need to know what works well. You can also use how if you are pertaining to a process or why. Next, you will specify the independent, dependent, mediating, or control variable. So, in this question, we have the amount of sunlight as the independent variable, and the dependent variable is the growth of your plant. Step 4, use the describe, compare, and relate words. So, understand how the amount of sunlight affects plant growth. So, you will, what? Compare. Compare is the suitable word for this question. Then, indicate the participants. So, in the plant growth experiments, the plants could be the participants themselves, the research site where you conduct the experiments, such as in the greenhouse, in the garden, or in the laboratory. So here are the examples of questions. So we have 3 popular forms of quantitative questions: descriptive questions, relationship questions, and comparison questions. You can use either of these type of or forms of research questions. First, we will discuss the format for descriptive questions. Okay, descriptive questions are used to capture information about how participants respond to a single variable or question. Okay, here is the template for descriptive. How frequently do you indicate the participants, variables, then the research site? Example, how frequently do the tomato plants flower at the garden? Kapila man mamulak ang kamatis nga flower sa unsa nga garden? Tas specific garden in your gulayan sa paaralan garden. Okay? Simple. Descriptive question. Next, relationship question. Naano ni relationship? However, relationship questions are designed to understand the connection. Relationship man. So, na yung connection. Or, if there are correlation, or there is a correlation between 2 or more variables. Relationship. There is a certain degree of relationship between 2 or more variables. So we have this template, the standard script for relationship questions. How does the independent variable relate to dependent variable for participants at research site. So, commonly, so this is the common script for experimental study because we are looking into the relationship of the independent and dependent variable. So, we need to use this kind of format, the relationship questions format. So, how does the amount of water relate to the growth of tomato plants? Pwede nang ganun. Then, kung gusto mong lagyan ng participants, kung sino ang participants, and saan gaganapin ang study. Okay? So, that is the question for relationship. How about comparison? If you will compare groups. Comparison questions are used to investigate how two or more groups typically distinguished by an independent variable differ in terms of one or more outcome variables. These questions are often employed in experiments where researchers apply some intervention or treatment to one group while withholding it from another group for comparison. So these comparison questions are also usual or common in your scientific study because you will compare if you have innovation treatments, intervention treatments. So you will compare your treatment, the developed treatment from the control. Okay? So, here is the standard script for comparison questions. How does Group 1 differ from Group 2 in terms of your dependent variable for the participants at the research site? Example, how does the group of tomato plants receiving a high dose of the new organic fertilizer differ from the group of tomato plants receiving no fertilizer in terms of plant growth for the participants at the research site? So that is an example of comparison questions. So we are done with the research questions. Now, let us proceed with the scope and delimitation of your study. So, you will write. How will you write the scope and delimitation of the study? We will watch a video about this topic.
So, may limitations kayo ng jowa mo. Okay lang yan. Sa research nga, may limitations din eh. May jowa ka man o wala, kailangan mo to. Ang scope and delimitation of the study. Before we go to our main topic, let's first clarify the difference between limitation and delimitation. Parang sa relasyon lang, kailangan klaro muna. So alamin natin yung pagkakaiba ng limitation sa delimitation. According to IMS blog ng St. Cloud State University, the limitations aim to narrow the scope of the study. These are choices made and boundaries set by the researcher which should be mentioned. Now let's proceed to limitations. Limitations aim to identify the potential weaknesses of the study. These are influences, shortcomings, or conditions that the researcher cannot control. So yung delimitation bilang researcher, sa umpisa pa lang siniset na natin siya. On the other hand, ito namang limitations beyond our control. Ito yung mga bagay na hindi natin inaasahan pero nangyari sa research study natin. Ganyan kasi talaga minsan, no? May mga bagay na beyond your control. Ayaw mo, pero nangyayari pa din.
Ayaw mo, pero nangyayari pa din.
Okay, another thing, saan ba inilalagay si limitations at si delimitations? Parang sa relasyon. Dapat alam mo kung saan ang lugar mo. Okay, so wag malilito at wag pagpapalitin. Si delimitation, nakasulat yan, matatagpuan yan sa chapter 1 or sometimes in the methodology section. Si limitation naman is written and mentioned into the final section of your research paper, usually dun sa results and discussions. Ayan na, malinaw na yan. Yung difference between delimitation and limitation. Sabi nga ni Boy Abunda, di ba? Sa relasyon, walang hulaan. Dapat klaro ang lahat. Okay, so tara na. Punta na tayo sa main topic natin, ang scope of the study. The scope of the study refers to the extent to which the research area will be explored. This part also explains the parameters within which the study will be operating. Para maisulat nyo yung scope of the study, I will provide you with prompts. These are phrases na pwede nyong pansimula ng paragraph nyo. So these prompts are the following. Ayan, gamitin nyo yung mga yan. So at this point, punta naman tayo kay the limitation of the study. The limitation of the study, this deals with the boundaries of the study. Gaya nga ng sabi natin kanina, it aims to narrow the scope of your study. Ito naman yung mga prompts na pansimula natin sa pagsulat ng paragraph ng the limitation of your research. Ngayon, ang tanong, ano naman ang ilalagay natin o ilalaman natin sa part na ito ng chapter 1? So, punta na tayo sa pinakamahalaga, yung ilalaman mo o ilalagay mo sa scope and delimitation. So, ito yung mga pwede mong ilagay, yung general purpose ng study mo, yung important details nito. Tapos, ito, napakahalaga, yung population, yung target respondents, ilan sila, yung sample size. And then, mention about the geographical location, saan mo ba i-conduct yung research study mo or taga-saan yung mga respondents mo. So, mention about the setting. At importante din na i-mention mo yung duration, yung research timeline. Anong panahon yung sakop niyang research study mo? May mga ibang researcher na sinasama nila to sa scope and delimitation, yung instrument na ginamit nila or gagamitin nila, yung sampling method, yung research design, tapos even yung financial limitation no, nung study nila ay isinasama nila. However, yung mga binanggit natin kanina, okay na yon. Sila yung talagang mga dapat ilagay o ilaman sa scope and delimitation. Ito na yung pinaka-aabangan nyo, ang scope and delimitation. Si Ma'am Ana hindi madamot kasi ang research paper parang pag-ibig yan. Ibinabahagi, hindi pinagdadamot. Kaya, eto na yung sample natin. Okay, scope and delimitation. Punta muna tayo sa ating research title, Peer Tutoring, Its Effects on Reading Fluency of Senior High School Students. So our scope and delimitation, the study will cover the determination of the effects of peer tutoring to reading fluency. The primary subjects of this research study will consist of the grade 12 students enrolled in academic year 2020-2021. The respondents will be limited to 10 grade 12 students who are in the Hume section of Academic Senior High School of the City of May Kawayan in the Division of May Kawayan, Bulacan. Moreover, the participants will be purposely selected by referring to the record of grades in the English subject, reading and writing. In the pretest, the participants are marked as non-fluent level 1 readers. On the other hand, the peer tutors will be composed of honor students in the same class. They are the real-life peers of the aforementioned participants. Ayan, ka-schooler. So, simple lang, di ba? Madali lang ang part na ito ng chapter 1. So, kung may questions ka pa, comment mo lang sa baba. Tapos, pakijowa naman.
Okay, so the example presented is for social research for Hume's students and ABM students because they are the one making social research. However, in our case, STEM, so we are having experimental or scientific research. So this is an example of the scope and delimitation statement for experimental research. So the scope of this study encompasses the investigation of the impact of various fertilizer types, organic and synthetic, on the growth and yield of tomato plants. The study will be conducted in a controlled greenhouse environment. The variables of interest include plant height, number of fruits, and overall health of tomato plants. This research will specifically focus on, pwede na ito wala, their ability to manage and apply the chosen fertilizers. If yung participants mo are the grade 8 students. Excluded from this study are factors beyond the control of the selected fertilizers such as environmental conditions, temperature, humidity, and pest infestation. Additionally, the study does not consider long-term effects beyond the growth and yield of tomato plants such as soil composition changes. Yun ang kanyang scope and delimitation. Let's proceed to your written statement of the problem that I've mentioned in the first competency, the research question. So we need to formulate the written statement of the problem and research question as well as the scope and delimitation. But basically, the statement of the problem and the research questions work hand in hand. Statement of the problem. Statement of a problem is a claim that outlines the problem addressed by a study. A good research problem should address an existing gap in knowledge in the field and lead further investigation. So we can say that research problem is a concise description that identifies the issue being studied in a research problem. The existing gap. You should target a gap in the current knowledge within the field and catalyze additional investigation. Kasi pag hindi strong yung statement of the problem mo, the gap that you need to address, I think that you need to improve this one, statement of the problem, because you really need to state clearly the gap that you need to address. It consists with the general objectives and the specific objectives. The general objectives of the study determines the research design of the study, while specific objectives of the study determine the tests or statistical tools used in the study. So here are the example of our science investigative project, antifungal activity of 3 plant-based essential oils against Colletotrichum gloosporioides, the causative agent of mango anthracnose. Its implications on inquiry-based learning through science investigatory project. The general objectives, generally, this study determined the antifungal activity of Ocimum sanctum, Curcuma longa, Origanum vulgare essential oils against Colletotrichum gloosporioides Specifically, this study aimed to compare and characterize the diameter of mycelial inhibition of Ocimum sanctum, katong mga essential oils, against the Colletocricum in reference to mancozeb and distilled water. Determine the significant difference in the diameter of essential oils. Kana. Ang iyang gusto sa ang specific nga objectives kay compare and characterize the diameter, determine the significant difference, and elucidate the implications of inquiry-based learning through science investigative project in STEM. In STE pala ito. Junior high pala ito na study. Guidelines of quantitative purpose statement. In general, it identifies the variables, their relationships, and the participants and site of the research. So, mao ni ang mga guidelines nga buhaton nato. Write the purpose statement in a single sentence. Begin the statement with key identifiers such as the purpose of the study. If you plan to use theory, introduce it in this statement by stating that you plan to test a theory. 3 options exist for using variables in this statement. You seek to relate 2 or more variables to compare a variable composed of 2 or more groups in terms of dependent, or to describe one variable. Use the word relate or compare or describe to indicate whether variables will be related, groups will be compared, or variables will be described. If variables are related or groups compared, specifically the independent and dependent variables, any control or mediating variables. State the independent variable first, followed by the dependent variable. Yun. Example of purpose statements. The purpose of this study is to test the theory, if you're testing a theory, of varying levels of exposure to ultraviolet light that affect the growth of tomato plants. These are the script for the purpose statement. So it is a general purpose statement. But we will be using this format. Okay? So that's the end of our study. In this task, you will write the research questions, scope and delimitation, and the purpose statement of your science investigatory project. You can now work on your groups. Thank you very much for listening. May God bless us always.